Hi guys, Claudia Boleyn here. So today is another update video. So we've got Prince Harry's witness statement. It's quite long. I've downloaded it. I haven't got a load of time today to do that. So today's video is going to be sort of a compilation of the weirdest reactions and talking points I've seen regarding this trial. So on Monday, I'm going to record a longer video, which is based on Harry's witness statement. We're going to go through some of the more interesting things in the statement, but I wanted to give that some actual time because, you know, it's worth looking at that. It's so in depth. But I think the media coverage of this case and a great victory of what Harry is doing, no matter what the court rules, is showing the complicity, right, and the corruption of the British press. Because this is a situation where Harry has chosen to do this the public way. He's not taken the money because, and again, it's kind of what he did with his book as well, right? He decided to put his own words out there, put his experience out there at great personal cost to himself. It made him vulnerable to attacks. He was very vulnerable, and his critics have been able to use his vulnerability. But it was a very brave thing for him to do, because what we're able to see now is we're able to see the difference between his experiences and the way he perceives it and the way it's being reported on by the press, right? That's a great victory of Spare, the book. And this is even more significant, in my view, because we have the court records, right? We have a full witness statement. Harry has actually put himself out to go to that court, right, and be grilled. And it's true that if you're a victim of a crime, you know, in the justice system, it's a very, very scary and traumatic experience, you know, even to relive the situation, let alone be grilled on it. But him doing this publicly, I really do believe is making an impact, because I am seeing so many people, it's kind of slowly happening, but people who I've not seen engage with this at all are starting to twig, right? People who don't care for the royals, you know, maybe they're a bit like me before all this and they just didn't think about it very much and they're into other things. They're starting to connect it, right? Because Harry is connecting it. So Harry himself has spoken about how we have a press right now, certain areas of the tabloid press, which stir up hatred against minority groups. They make hate figures out of certain people and they've got an agenda. And this is how the public gets its news. He also brings up the government, and he's very right to do so because, you know, I talk about this on my podcast. All of these systems here in the UK are connected. So, you know, smearing Harry and Meghan for being different or difficult or trying to progress a system and seeing them smeared, right, is a message to anyone who wants to progress a system or sees an injustice. It's the same tool being used. It's what our government uses, right? It's what happens to whistleblowers. It's what they did to Jeremy Corbyn. It's the same system. So Harry coming forward, right? We have his words. He's doing this so openly at great personal cost. People are able to see this. They're able to read the document if they want. And then they're able to look at the coverage. And I still think this, in the years to come, will be, the perception of Harry and Meghan here is going to change quite dramatically as time goes on, because I think people are still very brainwashed by the tabloids. But I really genuinely think this might be a turning point for people. I am seeing people who don't even care about the royals or care about Harry starting to think, wait a minute, this is a bit weird. And the press have gone too far. They've gone way too far with this, and it's what they did with Meghan as well, right? I've said this before, but the royal family, which I think is a terrible institution in so many ways, and it harms everyone involved in it, and it also harms the country, it harms the world, really. But they have, every single time, they have squandered their chances. They've ruined it themselves, right? First of all, with Diana. Diana could have bought them more time. Diana was very popular, but they couldn't adjust to her. The system was so corrupt. The system was so... It was this egocentric, narcissistic hierarchy of a system. So her shining, which would have been, you know, the most brilliant thing for them to sell the monarchy, which is what you would think they want, they messed that up. They had another opportunity with Meghan, right? They want to brand themselves as being modern. They don't want people thinking about the history of imperialism and colonialism. And right there, right, destiny sent Meghan. So Harry falls in love with Meghan. And all they had to do is embrace her, right? And they would have bought themselves more time. But again, they couldn't take it. The system is so corrupt, they couldn't take it. So both of those situations has actually made the royals look bad, right? And the third situation is with Harry, because we know Harry has tried to find a middle ground. Harry is a monarchist. Well, he was when he wrote in Spare. I think he's starting to understand. And again, they've lost something very important here that would have been good for them as a brand. He's starting to understand how these systems connect, right? Harry's idea of the monarchy is something, this is probably for another video, but Harry takes the life of service thing to heart. I believe that Harry was indoctrinated and groomed into that system, and he's one of the only ones who actually believed the hype. So when he's told that our duty is to serve, right? Our duty is to protect people. And again, if you're anti-monarchy, you're probably like myself. The royal family doesn't do that for us, right? It just doesn't. It's propaganda, it's hierarchy, it's all of those things. But very sincerely, Harry growing up in that system, he took those actual messages to heart. And you know he did, because he's the only one, you know, even in this case, he is the only one following those values. And it's just such an awful shame, because I think he's starting to realise, or will realise over time, that the very system he was raised into and those values that he had are just lies. But he followed them, right? They are good values to have, you know, being of service to other people, being part of communities, doing what you can to help. But I think he bought into that lie, right? And he really believed it. And what an asset Harry would have been if only that system would have sorted itself out, right? And progressed. And it's good for us, the anti-monarchists. And honestly, it's good on a personal level, because the idea of Harry remaining in that system, right? And going through that abuse and being that scapegoat all his life is horrific. It's a good thing that he left. I know the trauma of it must be so difficult for him to comprehend, that his whole life has been this part of this abuse cycle, right? And a brand that the people he loves and cares about are part of, either against their will or willingly or complicit in some ways. For us, it's wonderful that he's gone, because he is safer and his kids are now safer, or they should be. Obviously the tabloids are going into, and the palace are going into extreme fight mode, making that very difficult, because it is like a cult. You know, if you want to leave, they'll get you. They will grow you up as a mascot. You won't have they'll make you a celebrity, right? As a child, they'll put you on the front of magazines. And if you decide when you're older, I don't want that anymore, they will throw you to the wolves and you won't have protection anymore, even though you never asked to be that public figure. But they have lost Harry, right? This was their third and final chance. And Harry has given them that chance. And still, they are stubborn, they are jealous, it's a hierarchy. The tabloids won't have it. I think Harry is, it seems to me that he's starting to realise that all these systems are connected to each other, and that the things he thought were patriotism and Britishness and things that the royal family represented are actually things that they don't model, right? It's all just words. Now, we've got people here, so I'm going to just use some examples of the weird coverage that's going on here. But what you'll notice, I don't know if you'll notice if you follow the same people as me, but there are so many people now, celebrities I don't even agree with, right? And this is across the spectrum. This is not just certain liberals or leftists, or, you know, across the spectrum, people are starting to get wise, and people are starting to kind of get behind him. So this is John Cleese. I don't like John Cleese. He's one of those people that, he was in Monty Python, very funny man. He's gone into that very much, anti-woke, you know, cancel culture gone mad. But this is a good example, because this is somebody who wouldn't be like, oh, I'm into woke stuff, you know, I don't like snowflakes, everyone's being cancelled. But this is his perspective, and I've used this because a lot of people are kind of along these lines right now. I have friends observing Prince Harry's case against the Mirror. They all tell me he did very well under cross-examination yesterday, very calm, no embarrassing moments. The British press mostly reports something quite different, as one would expect. They are lying, as usual. This show of force from the tabloids, and it's the same show of force I believe we've seen from the firm, is going to be their undoing. It's going to be their undoing, because they're pushing it too far. They've gone too far, and people are starting to see it. And people will accuse Harry and Meghan, right? If the monarchy fails, which I think it will. I think it's on its way out, honestly. It doesn't make any sense. But I think they're accusing Harry, right? Oh, you're the one who's doing this. You're destroying it. He was the lifeline, right? Thinking as a PR brain, and I don't want the system to continue. He was the absolute lifeline of that system. Meghan was a lifeline in that system. It would have bought them more time. They've done it to themselves. They have done it to themselves, and people are seeing it. This is Diana's child, Diana's youngest child. He's gone through that grief and trauma as a little boy, right? Been stalked his whole life. And now the press are doing this. And people who before would have bought into it, right? They would have thought, oh, he's woke, he's this, he's that, he's difficult. They are starting to see it because the tabloids they're overplaying it. They're so confident, they're so arrogant, they've gone too far. It's like with Jeremy Clarkson, Piers Morgan. They feel so emboldened and empowered, and ordinary people don't like that, right? They have, sure, lots of people have been conditioned to see Harry as difficult, but the idea of the press dictating to us things, a lot of people don't like that idea, and that can stretch across the spectrum. So when I turned on, I can't remember if it was BBC News or ITV News, it was one of the main ones, so I was really shocked. Now, when they reported on the issue, on the evening news that night, they showed a few choice snippets of information, right? And they're using that one of when, I believe it's the MGN's lawyer was grilling Harry and asked him about something like, will you feel disappointed if there was no phone hacking? Something along those lines, you've probably heard about it. And Harry says, well, if they find that there wasn't, I would feel a sense of injustice. And then he's asked, oh, so you want there to have been phone hacking? And Harry says, well, no, of course not. Nobody wants to have been phone hacked. They led with that. They led with that little bit of victim blaming. They also brought up the Chelsea Davy situation, some personal details about that to try and make him seem like a bad person or whatever. And it's so wicked, right? And I couldn't get over that this was one of the main channels. This was not GB News. It was victim blaming on a mass scale. Because think about it like this. I can't quite get over what I heard here. So the logic they're giving us here is, if you're an abuse victim who wants to take that forward, right, and you're trying to get justice, which is scary, right? So say you want to take that forward, and you're asked the question, how will you feel if you don't get that justice? Obviously, you're going to say, well, I would be disappointed because obviously I took this forward it was scary to do it, but I took this forward to try and get justice, so obviously I'd be disappointed. Basically, the message is, oh, so you wanted to have been abused? Is that what you're saying? You're saying that you wanted it. It's the most awful. I couldn't believe that they are so open, they are so nakedly victim blaming. You know, think about it like this. Harry was a child, right? Harry was stalked from childhood. Imagine this as a child you know, right? Or you as a child. You've been stalked by strangers for your childhood, for the duration of your childhood. As an adult, you want to take that forward and say, that was unjust, that was awful, that's negatively impacted my life, and I want something done about it. It's not right that those grown adults stalked me and frightened me when I was a child. And then when you're in court, someone says to you, oh, you've brought it to court, so I guess you want them to be found guilty, to which you say, yes, of course. And then they say, so you're getting enjoyment out of it. So you're glad, you want it to be that you were stalked, is that it? And it's so sick because that's what you were anyway. Right, you're a victim in that system. You are a victim. The case is to see if it can be proved in a court of law, right? It's not that you become a victim when you get justice, and it's certainly not that it's some great and wonderful thing that people would go through that trauma just to be able to say, I'm a victim, and then people could turn around and say, oh, I bet you're loving it. I bet you're loving being a victim. And bear in mind, this is what they're going to do if Harry wins, by the way. That's how sick it's got here. That is how sick it's got. If he manages it, and I really hope he does, they are then going to say, well, he did it for the money. He just wanted to be a victim. Like, why? This was what he wanted all along. They are basically saying that this child wanted to be abused. That's what they're telling us on the main channels here in the UK. Okay, so GB News has just been ridiculous. Right, I'm going to make a video this weekend because it'll be shorter. Their output over the past couple of days has been deranged. The amount of videos they have created, right? I've just seen it on their YouTube channel. We've got Sky News, you won't even believe this, right? GB News and Sky News have both hired Harry impersonators who I must say were very poor, very, very bad at what they were doing, to dramatically read the testimony out. Has everyone lost their minds here? This is the story of a child victim of stalking, which we know happened, whether or not he can prove the phone hacking, right? We all know that he was a victim of stalking and abuse from childhood. by grown adults. We know he's a victim. It's not even a situation where we have to think, oh, I wonder if he was a victim or not. Yes, he was. We know it. Like, it's known. It's not even something to argue about. The thing they're trying to prove is there enough proof to prove he's been hacked? But even if there wasn't, we have the footage. We've seen the grown adults chasing him, chasing his mother, spying on his father and his brother and his whole family. From childhood, we know it. And this is how we treat a child victim. On Jeremy Vine, which comes on in the mornings, awful show which pretends to be really like, oh, we're moderate and we're fine, but it's not. They asked the public as a phone-in, has Harry won or lost your support? Can you imagine that happening with any other child victim? Can you imagine it? The dehumanisation of Harry is so strong. It is not for the public to be calling up, has this child victim lost my support? Was the child victim likeable enough for me? That should not be being thrown out to the public to even discuss. But the woman who was on this show, right, she's a proper commentator. She wasn't just a member of the public. And she said this on the show, right? She was platformed and she said this. Oh, I liked Meghan at the start, but then, I'm paraphrasing here, she got like the magical sense suddenly about something Meghan said about changing things or something, and then she realised, oh, that we've got trouble on our hands here, oh dear. And then she says this. She actually says she's got her career plan, she's started her TIG thing up again, and she's working her way towards being the first female Afro whatever, and then she's corrected, African-American, yes, African-American president. So the abuse of Harry, and the abuse of Meghan, but this specifically being about the abuse of Harry, is now, you see how it's all connected. They're telling on themselves. There is a lot of racism there. It's about Meghan is difficult. Meghan being the first Afro whatever. And if you could see this clip and the disdain, right, I don't know what's in people's hearts, but I mean, I get a sense. She wants to be the first Afro whatever president, the first female Afro president. Like, and also, the idea that, we had trouble on our hands. We realised when she started speaking we had trouble on our hands. So that's a confession again, isn't it? Because the system couldn't handle a woman of colour, a biracial woman of colour, who had her own thoughts and opinions, right? Because the system is meant to crush the individuals within it, or they're meant to comply and rise. It's complicated because, like, for example, Kate Middleton seems to be complicit. She's risen, her PR is really good. I don't reckon she's happy. I don't think she's happy, but she's part of the system. I don't think it seems like a fun system to be in. But they admit that the system couldn't cope with Meghan. The system wouldn't have been able to cope with Meghan, either because the system is so sexist, because the system is so ancient and not working in the modern world, or because it's racist. They are all admitting it. This sense they suddenly got that when Meghan spoke, she's not going to fit here. The acknowledgement that the system is not fit for modern women. That system is not something we want for Charlotte, right? Seriously, speaking as if Charlotte was your child, would you want that system for her? A system that when a woman actually has something to say and does it articulately, right, and does it politely, that's not allowed. We want Charlotte in that system, do we? We need to shut that system down. Okay, we've got a woman called Amanda Patel who writes for the Mail Online, and she put out this: is Harry still obsessed with former love Chelsea Davy? Harry mentions her 118 times in court evidence, Meghan just 5 times. No wonder Meg didn't show up. Now, thankfully, on Twitter, we have a feature where you can get a fact check, so you can see when people are just openly lying. So this is the context. Harry's MGN claim is restricted to 1996 to 2011. He dated Chelsea Davy from 2004 to 2009 and met his now wife Meghan in 2016. Amanda Patel was also a Mirror executive during the period the claimants allege the executives knew about and concealed unlawful information gathering. Surprise, surprise! They have pushed it too far. They've pushed it too far. I cannot believe that this is a person giving their victim testimony, right? Whether or not they can prove it, they are now trying to say, oh, actually, even this is a weapon against Meghan Markle. It's a weapon against Harry. Let's try and destroy this victim more. Let's try and get involved in their marriage. Was he obsessed with Chelsea Davy? They long for him to be obsessed with Chelsea Davy because Chelsea Davy was a white blonde girl, right? Let's be honest. They wanted that. Although that being said, they treated her appallingly. The press treated her absolutely appallingly. Harry speaks about the affection he had for Chelsea and the pain of You know, when he really cared about somebody, he was like, he thought of himself as like some sort of curse, because he brought all this attention with him. Not, it wasn't what he wanted, he was born with it. And a lot of people couldn't take it, and they couldn't handle the situation. And also because he was abused by that system, he wasn't dealing with things in the best way, because how could you? They are using the fact that he was upset talking about this in court to imply that he doesn't love Meghan. And how sick, how absolutely sick. What normal person, you know, if you've had a relationship with somebody and you care about that person, right, it would hurt you. It would still hurt you to think of the suffering that they endured, because he would blame himself. He blames himself in spare. It's not his fault, but in his own mind, you know, you can tell that he's, you know, he talks about feeling like the people he cares about suffer because the tabloids attack them, right? They hunt them, and it ruins everything. Being upset about that, being upset and angry about his own feelings and how that impacted the relationship, how he was a young man trying to figure things out and he was up against this. You know, thank goodness Harry found Meghan, and he's so open. He loves Meghan. Meghan is the love of his life. You know, Meghan has helped him become this man that he is now, right? I know it sounds like a weird thing to say, but it's like Diana did the first bit. You know, Diana did wonders. There's so much of Diana in Harry. And you can see that this person he's become has always been in him. But to have that outside person like Meghan encouraging, supporting, being that stable backing, right? It's made him stronger. He is a strong, I mean, he's brave, right? He's a very brave individual. And that's again why the system didn't want her. It empowered Harry. She empowered Harry. Harry was meant to be the spare. He was meant to feel second best. He was not meant to be empowered. That was a threat. He was not meant to feel like he was first place for anyone, right? That wasn't what he was supposed to feel. He was always supposed to feel like he was second best. He was supposed to know his place. And again, how ridiculous it is that the time period of this case is before he met Meghan. Of course it's about his relationship with Chelsea Davy, because that was who he was with during the time period. The way they will twist anything, you know, and they don't do this for William and Kate. Think about, you know, we've all heard the gossip, we've all heard the tabloid stuff. I don't really want to repeat the tabloid stuff here because I don't think it's my business. But something which is an act of love from Harry, right? He said this himself. He's doing this because he wants to, he talks in spare about feeling helpless a lot. In his life, he's made to feel very helpless. He's in this awful situation where he's been taught to serve and protect people, right? That is his duty. But he also feels like he's not allowed to do that because he's not allowed to speak. And he's reached that point, you know, it's like people in a cult, really, where they want to do good in the world, and then they realise the very system that they thought they were doing good for is actually stopping them from doing that good, because they're shutting them down when they try to do the good. In fact, I think what Harry's learned is that the actual life of service that he learned strangely from the system and that he got from his grandma has actually led him to leave the system and fight the tabloids, because that's an actual life of service, right? But he said that he wanted to do something about these tabloids. Like, they have harassed him through his life, and they've pushed Meghan to near suicide, right? They have attacked and attacked. And this is him saying, I will fight you. I will try and win, but even if I don't, you're not shutting me down, and I'm not afraid of you. And that's the win here, isn't it? This is Harry saying, I am not that child. You are not going to abuse me and push me around without a fight, because I will fight you. I'm not afraid of you, and I will come for you. Whenever you come for me, I will meet you, and you do not have control over my life. It's like in an abuse situation, you know, you might have this in your lives. When you set a boundary, it's empowering. Whether or not the people around you respond to that boundary is irrelevant. It's you saying, I know my rights, I know my boundaries, and I will have my boundaries. You do not frighten me, and you will not control me. And whether or not you listen, this is me saying that. This is a huge, huge thing Harry is doing. You know, he's essentially saying, isn't he? He's daring them. You know, they thought he'd be too frightened. They thought he'd take the payout. They thought, oh, you know, he won't want it because we're going to smear him. We're going to put out personal details. We're going to make it hell for him. Because abusers do. When they think they're losing control over a victim, they amp it up. They make them frightened. They try and get them back in line. And Harry has taken those hits, right? And they've been awful hits. You know, he has been attacked and attacked and attacked. They haven't beaten him. Harry is their big problem, right? Harry is kind of like their nemesis. And they created this problem for themselves, right? Because they hurt and harassed this boy. And they did it to his mother, right? It feels like karma. And it's an awful, awful thing that Harry's going through and that Meghan is going through. But his experiences, and this is what I wanted to say for you guys as well, if you've gone through these negative experiences. I'm not saying the negative experiences were good. You know, I don't believe that. No one should be hurt. No one should be abused. But sometimes what you learn in those experiences is you learn about yourself, and you learn about your value, and you learn about the sort of person you want to be. If you're someone who's been treated in that manner, you can choose to be somebody who does not do that to other people. You can choose to use that experience and say, I am going to stand up and I'm going to protect other people because I don't want anyone else going through that. And I know this system. I've been through it. You have given me, by mistake, the solutions I need. You have shown your hand. You have shown me why I need to fight you, and you have given me that resolve. And I will stand up for myself, and I will stand up for other people. If you understand that system, you understand so many abusive systems, and they lose their power over you. That's what's happened with Harry. They've lost control of Harry. Harry is the loose cannon. That's why they're painting him as this mad, petulant child. They've lost control of him. And, you know, the thing is, they sent him off the rails, right? They always wanted him to be the problem prince, the rebel prince, because it made William look good. That was his role. And Harry talks in his statement about how in that family you're born in and you're given a role, and you can become that role because you're told it. If you tell a child they are something enough, sometimes they become that thing because they don't know anything else. But they have created the person. They have accidentally, it's poetic, they have created a genuine rebel prince, a genuine loose cannon, even down to the fact that he named his book Spare. Spare was a horrible kind of title that showed he was second best. What's he done? He's reclaimed it, he's used it. He said, that's the title you've given me, but I'm not. I'm going to use it, I'm going to fire it back at you. I own it. There is such power in that, and they do not know how to deal with Harry. It's impossible. They have no idea. They've never dealt with somebody like Harry before. I think the palace probably feel the same because they have created a person who really believes the life of service. The same lie that most of them, I believe, don't think's real. They just say it. They actually created someone who felt that way. And he's realised, and they try and say he's not smart. I don't know how Harry is academically. On a social level, Harry is smart. He sees through these systems, he's intelligent. He has taken that life of service and he's applied it, right? It's not just a title, he believes it. They made him into that character. They told him that his whole life, that's what you're born for. And that's abusive in itself. You know, you've been born into this role, therefore you are public property, therefore you do what we want you to do. You're doing this for the people, right? Even though it was painful for him. Even though in the book you can tell it's caused him great stress and confusion and it's really messed him up. It's not a healthy system to have to go through. But he's taken that to heart. He's taken it to heart so much. He bought into their own ridiculous lies, to the fact that he is now serving the people by taking out the villainous tabloids. That is not what they wanted to happen. You know, they had this with Diana, right? Diana was quite sincere and emotional. They don't want that. They want people who'll pretend to be that, who'll give the PR of that, but behind the scenes they'll be complicit, they won't change anything. They have a massive, massive problem with Harry, and it was the same problem they had with Diana, because I think they realised, wait, Diana is real. These kids that she has are not meant to be real, they're meant to be playing real, but really they're with us. Diana, towards the end of her life, right, she began to actually, the way she interpreted service, right? The causes that she championed, she would always lean towards the underdog, right? And I'm not saying Diana was this big socialist or left-winger, but she was born a lady, right? She was born in this big, big system. And yet Diana always kind of steered towards more middle-class things, right? She steered away from pompous things. And when she was abused herself, you know, in her childhood and what she went through, you know, in the marriage, she always leant more towards other underdogs, other people that needed help. And we see that, you know, there are some things that she was told, don't touch that. That's too real. That's actually helping people, don't touch it. It's like when Meghan brought up Me Too, right? You're not supposed to say that. You're only supposed to play the part of caring about things. You're not supposed to actually do it. You know, Harry's been sold this idea that as part of the monarchy, we have a responsibility. You're a prince, and that means that you fight for this country in whatever way you can. That, with Diana's emotional intelligence that he's also got, has meant that he's been able to take that further. He's come out of the system and has continued, in his own perspective, to fight for what he thinks is right and to serve. It's tragic for him because it's a very sad story for him to go through. But this very specific sequence of events and how he's ended up here has actually created, I think, an actually genuinely brave and genuinely actually selfless royal, which I don't know if we've seen that before. Someone who's been born in that manner, you know. And I say that when we don't need to be thankful for our trauma. Nobody wants to go through trauma, but everything in Harry's story, everything he's gone through, you know, has led him to here. And he is, at this point, serving the people, right? He thinks he's doing this because he can see now. He can see that the royal family were telling lies, right? A lot of that ideology wasn't being followed. Now, he might still believe in the ideology, but only if it's done sincerely. So what he might object to is the fact that it's just for show. So he still, from his position last time he spoke, he believed in the royal family, but he wanted it to be progressive, right? He wanted it to move more towards actually helping, right? That was his position. But he's now become aware, because he's been abused himself. He's aware of abuse dynamics. He's aware of smear campaigns. He's now able to apply that to the government, right? If you're in an abuse dynamic, if you've been abused, you might be someone who finds it easier, well, not, it's a horrible thing to understand, but once you understand the dynamic, it helps you with all different spheres. Politics, you can see when someone's being smeared. In the workplace, bullying, you can see these dynamics at play. And once you know it and you see it, you can't unsee it again. And a lot of us, this is the positive of going through an awful thing, it makes us very much like Diana, empathise with that underdog. And the systems don't want us to do that. The system will try, and if we get some sort of success, they'll try to absorb us back in, right? Because they don't want the underdogs getting ideas, right? They don't want the hierarchy changed up. But they've tried to lure Harry back, and he won't do it because he understands the system. He's seen it. He's lived it. They put him through that hell in so many ways, but now he sees it. He's not fooled anymore. Okay, and then on GB News with Dan Wootton, and again, I said they've done so much on GB News, but Tom Barrow was on. He accidentally says the quiet part out loud during the interview. Listen to this. Talking about Chelsea Davy. Well, she was the one who got away, there's no doubt. She was much better, probably much more fitting for him than Meghan, because, you know, she was English, from South Africa and all the rest of it, and it was clearly a passion of youth. He also says that Harry is pathetic, that he's delusional, and he believes in his delusions. But he's openly said, right, they're getting too bold, they're pushing it too far. Chelsea Davy would have been better. Chelsea Davy would have been better because she was white, right? She was English. I mean, yeah, sure, kind of South African as well, but she was white. That's what they're saying. But also, their position no longer makes sense. Because if that's the argument, that they wanted it to be Chelsea Davy, the press doing what they did made it unlivable for Chelsea, right? She couldn't cope. So by their own logic, they should be supporting Harry in this case, shouldn't they? Because they would be thinking, oh, well, we wanted that relationship to work and it didn't work and now he's met Meghan. In their minds, they should be with Harry on this. But they can't do that. Because once you start acknowledging Harry's pain and the abuse he suffered, you have to acknowledge the other abuse systems, right? The corruption runs so deep. It actually leaves them anti-monarchy in the end, and I'll make a video about this, because this is the story of a child born into a role, born as a celebrity and stalked. He's had to opt out and he's been so punished for it. If we can acknowledge that that is sick, we have to acknowledge that the same thing is now happening to George and Charlotte and Louis, right? It's on a different scale, yes, but the very notion of it is wrong and it's abusive. And they can't do that because they're pro-monarchists. You know, I've said before, Harry is going to end up, he's going to move further and further left because he understands the systems, right? He's understanding how it all works, and he puts himself down in Spare. He does, you know, or he says that, you know, he was thought of as being thick, right? And again, they do say this. At some point, someone says that that he doesn't have the intellectual capacity for this. You know, he's too stupid. I believe it was someone else on GB News. He doesn't have the intellectual capacity, and that's what they say when somebody has emotional intelligence, right? And that's what they'll say when somebody sees those systems. They'll go into, oh, well, they're just not clever. That is emotional intelligence, though. That is intelligence, right? You know, it's not about if you can do maths, right? It's not necessarily about that. There's so many different ways to be intelligent. Some of our greatest thinkers, some of the people who've changed this world for the better, have got emotional intelligence, right? They've got the intelligence to put situations together, to use their experience, take it further, apply it to a different system. They look for solutions, right? It's more intelligent to see a broken system and figure out ways to progress it or change it, because that shows extra leaps, right? It's less intelligent to remain in the system and to just go along with it without question, right? And just go with it because that's what it is. That's what these people are doing. They're trying to act, oh, Harry's so stupid, you know, he's so not bright. And again, say Harry wasn't academically bright at all, it would make no difference. He's still a victim, right? It would absolutely make no difference. But they want him to seem like he's stupid because their whole mentality is crumbling right now, because people getting sympathy for him would make their whole thing fall apart, right? They don't want anyone to see him as a child victim. They cannot have people seeing him as a human, and people are starting to do that. So GB News are just throwing out these insults like he's pathetic and he's stupid and he's this and he's that and he's evil and we hate him. But it's not working. It's like the last flailing of a bully, right? The last thing. It's an abuser desperately trying to get people back on side when they've been seen. They've invited Paul Burrell onto GB News. Paul Burrell is making the news. They've wheeled him out as they usually do. And this man is speaking against Harry, right? This man who has used Diana's name, who has benefited from her memory and her legacy. And I would just say this, right? If a close friend of mine passed and they had 2 little grieving children, right? What has Paul Burrell done to protect those children, right? He cares about protecting himself and the institution. You do not go on GB News with Dan Wootton, right? You can't tell me that Diana would be okay with that. Regardless, even if you don't agree with what Harry's doing, you would still be thinking, if you truly cared, that's Diana's boy. And I'm going to make sure he's okay. Even if we disagree, I'm going to make sure he's okay. But no, he's selling his story. You know, he's out there. And these are the people that always accuse Harry of... Harry was born a mascot. He didn't get a choice. He was made a celebrity, right? He's had to put the record straight because this whole notion of who he is has been foisted on him by other people. And yet these people come out of the woodwork, right? And they try and attach to his name and they try and make money from his name. And they are the ones who are narcissistic and cynical and trying to make themselves relevant right now. You've got Dan Wootton suddenly pretending to care about the well-being of Paul Burrell, right? And again, he's just using him. Dan Wootton will have anyone on. You've got Samantha Markle saying, oh, Harry should have married Chelsea Davy. And it's like, how much more obvious can you get in the racism here? People are openly saying it right now. And the fact is that all those people who think that, even if they're racist and awful people, they should still be supporting Harry right now then, shouldn't they? Because they wish that Harry had married the white girl. But Harry, you know, that relationship ended and it didn't work because of the abuse Harry was going through, because of the tabloids and the stalking. And regardless of whether or not they can prove that they were hacked, they were followed, she was hounded, it was too much for her. And Harry still holding affection for her is actually a really good and nice sign, right? Because if you care about someone, you've cared about someone, and you're someone who's empathetic, right? Your relationship might end. But if it's nobody's fault, if it's because of circumstances, right? If it's because it just wasn't right? And then you go on to meet the loves of your lives, why would you be nasty about them? This is somebody who Harry thinks has suffered for his sake, you know, because she was hounded, and he feels a lot of guilt over that. How is that not admirable, right? That's a nice thing. And even that compassion and that kindness that I wish more people had. You know, how many times do you get men that talk about their, not, you know, there's lovely men out there, but you get men sometimes who will talk about their ex, right? And they'll talk really awfully about them when they haven't really done anything that wrong. And to me, you know, that's a bad sign. That's not good. They're trying to pretend, oh, this story that Harry's still hung up on Chelsea Davy. He's hung up on the guilt of the fact that every person that has come into his life has suffered because of this role that was foisted on him. And it's funny because, yeah, sure, all these tabloids are like, oh, we wish he'd married Chelsea now. And it's like, well, like with everything else about Harry, you have done this, right? You guys and that system abused him, and now he is smarter and he understands more. He is more able to access his own, he's able to understand his mental health, right? He's able to set boundaries. And that has enabled him, right? He is elevated to that point that his partner has become somebody who, and I'm not putting down Chelsea Davy, I'm sure she's lovely, but what I mean is that because of this whole system and everything he's gone through, he's related to Meghan, right? As in, Meghan's struggles with racism, for example, I believe you can see the root of Harry's understanding of that and him empathizing with that comes through a life where he understands oppressive systems in different ways. Being able to apply that and to see those systems, so now we've got a relationship of equals, which the tabloids try desperately to destroy, but they can't do. They can't manage it. So they can't break Harry and Meghan up, right? They can't stop Harry from speaking. They're trying to frighten Meghan, and they know she's vulnerable because she's been suicidal before. But essentially that's all they can do. The press are now resigned to waiting outside the court for hours just to see Harry walk out of a car for 2 minutes, for 2 seconds more like. They're resorted to desperately trying to catch their pictures wherever they are if they go out in public. They're actually resorting to hiring people to impersonate Harry on their news shows, right? All ways to try and control him, but he won't be controlled. He can't be, right? You know, as a, you know, just looking at the story of Diana, right? I feel like Harry is doing right now what Diana couldn't do, right? And it was what she was starting to do when she died. She was growing into that person, wasn't she? And he has carried that on. He is the scapegoat of his family system, right? The scapegoat of the media, raised to be second best, basically raised to be abused, raised to never find out who he was or have happiness, right? Raised to accept his lot as second best. And accidentally, they've kind of created a superstar. That's the truth of what's happened, right? By accident. By accident, you've got people like me who are on the left and can't stand the monarchy actually paying attention and saying, that's brave. That is actually brave. And you know what? I've got time for him. And the media can't stop him. They can't stop Meghan. They've got no control. They are acting like abusers that lose control of their victim. They are flailing. They are being embarrassing increasingly. It's looking more and more bizarre to the general public. And I think no matter what happens in this trial, right, no matter what's found, it is a win in that regard. Because Harry will take these things on. He said, I'm not scared and I will take you to court. I will do it. You know, don't push me. You pushed my mother around. You pushed my father around. You've pushed my brother around to the extent that he's complicit. You're not going to push me. You're not going to push my wife, and you're not going to push my kids. And if you try, I will push you back. Anyway, thank you for watching this, and we're going to go through some of the witness statement in the next video. Might be a long one, but yeah, love you loads, and I hope you're really well. Okay, love you. Bye.